how big of a part do you want the Scions to play in Dawntrail?
I think the Scions should definitely play a big role, but I do think things need to be mixed up a little bit. We need some new characters. We've been with the Scions for so long now. Yeah. By the end of Endwalker, it felt like everyone's on the same page. The characters are pretty, far in development. So there's a danger that if we don't get new characters or current characters get new motives or change in some way, that things are just going to fall flat. I think it would be a mistake getting rid of the Scions. If one or two of the Scions fell off Kugane Tower, that wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. The most important question of this entire thing. What are your thoughts on pineapple on pizza? Hello everybody and welcome to Chocobo Radio episode number 29. Today we have a very, very, very special episode with the one, the only, Josen. Welcome to the podcast, Josen. How are you doing today?
Thank you, doing pretty good. How about you?
I am doing great. So I don't know about you, but Dawntrail is right around the corner, and there has been tons and tons and tons of news and videos and everybody talking about this new expansion. So I think where I want to start today is just by asking, what were your thoughts on Dawntrail from when we got the teaser trailers from FanFest to where we are now that Media Tour has happened, now that we have a live letter? How has your views or opinion on Dawntrail changed now that we have a little bit more information on it?
I think I was excited for it all the way through. Just the whole idea of the story being changed up is probably what I enjoyed the most about it. I think it's about time that we move on from, everything that's happened over the past few years. Yeah, and just move on to something new, basically.
Right, and it seems like the general gist or the general vibe that everyone keeps talking about is like this summer vacation, summer like anime beach episode. Does that concern you at all, or is that something that you actually are excited about?
No, I think they're tricking us. You know how the first you know how the first patch 6.1 was also what was it called, Adventure something? They were tricking us into thinking we're just gonna be basic adventures again, and then a patch later in the freaking void or something. I think it's bullshit. Sorry to use that word, but I think we're being misled.
I can kind of see where you're coming at, because it's not like we're gonna have an expansion where nothing happens. Something has to happen in order for it to be engaging, in order for it to be fun. So I think you're right. I feel like so far what they have showed us is very surface level. They haven't really shown us a lot, and hopefully, maybe midway through the MSQ, they just give us like a big twist. I don't know what it could be. One of the things that people have been talking about for a while now, or as far as like I'm concerned, like since I've been watching, is this idea of like a time skip. I don't think we're gonna get that, but it would be interesting if they just threw something huge at us and then just hid it from us this entire time. That's exactly what I am waiting for.
You mean that the story advances in like a few years, basically? Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to say it can never happen, but I think it would be interesting if there was like a time skip, and for example, Alphino and Alize are like adults, right? And we go on an adventure with them. Like, I think that would be cool, because I think from ARR to Endwalker, there hasn't really been that big of a change in terms of like time moving on. I know we got a little bit of that in Shadowbringers, but I don't think it was that substantial to call it like a time jump, in my opinion. But is that something that you would be interested in, like a maybe like a old-ish Sola, older Alphino Alize? Is that something that you would be excited for?
I mean, I think it could work story-wise. I think it's very hard to implement with how the game works right now. Like, imagine somebody who maybe hasn't done the Aram Reborn raids would have Urianger just still standing in the freaking Waking Sands,
Right.
and he hasn't ate. He's still wearing his goggles. It's just, I don't know how it would fit into the game's world.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. So, Dawntrail, like I said, is right around the corner. What are you most excited for? Is it the MSQ? Is it the graphics update? Is it the job changes? Like, what are you looking forward to the most?
I think it's a mix of all of that. I think a new raid here is always exciting. I think job changes. I think everyone's mostly looking forward to the job changes, the average person.
Yeah.
And as far as MSQ goes, just, again, starting something new, it's always going to be interesting.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that I always bring up in this podcast is this idea of, having a new start, giving new players a story skip. I'm just wondering, where do you fall into that whole conversation? Do you think every new Sprout should start with ARR, play through the 400 hours it takes to get through Endwalker, or do you think that at some point the devs should implement some sort of new start? Like, where do you fall in that conversation?
I think that this game 100% needs a story skip at some point, because the current story is just a massive barrier of entry. If you want to start playing this game, I'm actually replaying the story right now. I'm almost done again.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing kind of a story summary video. And it's about, I would say, if you do only story quests, it's about 150 to 200 hours. And that's me playing through it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So I think 200 hours is something you can't really ask of a new player just to get to something like raiding, because the average person, I think, is playing like maybe 2 hours a day at most.
Yeah, that's fair.
And at 2 hours, you're going to be sat there for half a year just doing story. Doing like... And I mean, it's not that the story is bad or anything, but I think a lot of players have other expectations going into an MMO. I think they should be free to do that story if they want to, but they should also be able to just start at Dawntrail.
Yeah, and I mean, the game already has a new game plus. It already has the unending journal where you can just go back and watch all of these cutscenes. So I mean, I completely agree. I have a few friends that I try to introduce into this game, and none of them made it through ARR. And I think one of the biggest complaints that a lot of like the people that I recommended the game had is this idea that there really isn't a lot of combat at the very beginning. I mean, Sastasha, the first dungeon, isn't to what, level 16? So to even try, like, this is like a video idea that I've been having in my mind for a little while, is that 14, while I love the game, it is like my favorite game, and it's a game that I put the most time into, I still consider this to be one of the hardest games to recommend to new players, because like you said, like it's such a time commitment, and I don't think a lot of gamers really want to put in all that time, because you know the old meme, oh, the game gets better in Heaven's Ward, the game gets better in Shadowbringers, and you just keep pushing, you just keep kicking it down, like kicking the can down the road. And I feel that eventually it's gonna be so long to get to end game or current game that a lot of new players are not gonna want to go through that. So I guess my question next is, what do you think is the solution to that? Because I was on stream the other day and I was talking to chat, and I was basically saying that I think one thing that they could do is make like a summary set of quests, right? Whether it's like 10, 20, 30 quests, I don't know. But it should be like a solo experience, because I don't know if anyone has played ARR recently, but trying to queue up for a dungeon when you're a Sprout in ARR right now is awful. And sure, you could go through it solo now with like the trust system or whatever it's called for ARR, but I think it's just so hard for a new player to go through it. So I'm just wondering, like, what do you think is the fix to that?
Well, I played some, to go on a tangent a little bit, I played some WoW a while ago, just trying to get a feel for the game, how it is nowadays. It's not a game that I ever really got into, and they have a similar problem, right? They want to get players to endgame. And WoW is basically on the polar opposite end. Basically, nothing before the max level matters at all, right? You do your little opening area, I think up to level 10.
Yeah.
You get thrown into like some random expansion, and then you're off to the most recent expansion. And I think that is not a good way to go about it if you want to build a game world that people feel connected to. Because it's kind of like, if I want to enjoy the current WoW story, I need to understand what happened before. But the developers actively try to stop me from playing that as a new player, basically. They try and get me into the end game as fast as possible. And it feels like they just don't care about anything that happened before. So why should I care as a new player? And I think in Final Fantasy XIV, you have the opposite. They make you play through all of the story. And because of that, a lot of players feel more connected to the game in a way. And I think that's really good for the game. You know how much people talk about the story versus how few people care about the World of Warcraft story. I think people care more about the lore of World of Warcraft than they care about the actual story.
I see. So when did you start 14? Like when did you first play through ARR?
I think I started sometime during Stormblood, but it's been a while. At first, I played the game kind of on and off.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what was that experience like for you, like when you first went through the game?
Yeah, I was on the camp that was very skeptical of the game when I started first. I looked at it as, it's kind of a Japanese anime. I was very skeptical, but
was it your first MMO?
No. I played MMOs before. I played some Guild Wars 2 in the past. I played WoW, but I was very skeptical, but very quickly I realized that the game was very charming. I actually enjoyed the way that the story was written. It was very different from what I'd experienced before. So I actually enjoyed A Realm Reborn. When I first played it, I thought the post-expansion arc is a little bit... It drags on a little bit too much, at least back then. I think now it's actually fine. They dialed it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Usually the patches are about 2 hours worth of cutscenes. And in A Realm Reborn, there's a few that are like 3-4 hours now.
Yeah.
But I didn't hate it. I thought the story was a little bit bland, but it's a nice introduction to the game's world. I think it could do a better job of explaining what happened in 1.0 story-wise.
Yeah, I don't think I know anything about 1.0 off the top of my head, now that I think about it.
Yeah, and I think it explained all of that a little bit better. I think A Realm Reborn would have been a pretty good start.
Yeah.
I think Heavensward improved a lot of that. Although Heavensward suffers from another issue where it feels kind of rushed during the story. I felt like certain parts had to... I think there was actually an issue they had. They had to release it. They were just a little bit behind schedule.
Yeah.
You know how... I don't know. I can talk about the story in this, right? We're not worried about people with spoilers.
Yeah.
You know how Thordan has all of his knights, right?
Yeah.
These guys, I think, had to be fleshed out a bit more than they were. They weren't talked about at all until you fight them at the end. You see them in some cutscenes, like Zephyrin and whatnot. But I think they were originally planned to have, some quests, so you learn about them a bit more. I think all of that was scrapped.
I can see that, yeah.
That was about my first experience with the game. I think A Realm Reborn was just fine. Heavensward was better. I liked the lore of Heavensward a bit more. It was just more epic, dragons.
I agree. I think Stormblood was okay. I think Stormblood. I like the dungeons, the trials, and the way that gameplay and combat was improved. And then Shadowbringers is just like a masterpiece in my opinion. But yeah, and I think that's what that is what interests me so much about Dawntrail is that we're now coming off the cups of Shadowbringers, which was amazing, Endwalker, which I personally think was also amazing. Now Dawntrail, and you know, there was a lot of this like doom and gloom that I saw on the internet, mostly Reddit, where people were saying that Dawntrail is going to be like the next Stormblood. It is going to be like a very mid expansion. I'm just wondering, like, how do you typically prepare for like a new expansion? Like, what do you do? Like, what is your mindset?
You mean in game or like on YouTube?
In general, yeah, in general, in game.
I think I prepare, you know, whatever I can prepare in game as far as I want to, like some currencies, whatnot. But for the most part, I just let it happen. I don't really prepare mentally or anything.
Yeah. Okay. So I think where I want to head now is just by talking about a little bit about the Scions. So the Scions have, you know, played a pretty big part in the entire game. And now that Dawntrail is right around the corner, I'm just wondering, how big of a part do you want the Scions to play in Dawntrail and past Dawntrail? Or do you kind of just want to give new characters like more like the spotlight?
I think the Scions should definitely play a big role, should continue to, but I do think things need to be mixed up a little bit. We need some new characters. One of the biggest issues is going to be kind of starting new character development. We've been with the Scions for so long now. Yeah. By the end of Endwalker, it felt like everyone's on the same page. The characters are pretty, you know, far in development. So there's a danger that if we don't get new characters or current characters get new motives or change in some way, that things are just going to fall flat. So we'll need new characters for sure. I think it would be a mistake getting rid of the Scions. Yeah, I mean, they're never going to get rid of them completely, but
right.
I think if one or two of the Scions, you know, fell off Kugane Tower, that wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. I completely agree. As much as I love them, I'm kind of, I don't want to say that I'm over them. I just want to experience other people in the world. Like I was talking the other day about like how when you think about like the lore and the characters, there seems to be a lot of like there's a lot of gaps in my opinion. There's like you never really see like, for example, any like quote unquote famous people in the game. Like I always wondered, like I've always been interested in the culture of you know, like the locations and like the people around it. And I've always said that I wanted to see more, like, say, like celebrities, for example. I've always wanted to see other powerful adventurers. I've always wanted to see more interesting and powerful people to like meet and interact with. And I feel like that is what I am looking for when I'm going to be playing through Dawntrail. Is like just more of a focus on the character themselves rather to just build up the lore and to do like world building. Because I think it was the Gunbreaker job quest where you have to like escort this like singer or like a celebrity, and I thought that was really cool. And I was like, damn, I kind of wish we had more of that. I want to know like what the culture is like in these places. I want to see like who is quote unquote famous or like who is like well known in these like locations, and I feel like we don't really get a lot of that.
Yeah, I can see that. Just knowing more characters in the game would definitely be interesting. Yeah. Just understanding the game's world a bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're getting two new jobs in Dawntrail. We have Pictomancer and Viper. I don't think you were at the media tour, right?
No.
So I'm
Maybe
just
next
wondering,
year. Oh,
yeah,
well, next expansion.
hopefully. I'm just wondering, like, from what you've seen about Pictomancer versus Viper, who do you think you're gonna go into Dawntrail with?
Well, the first job that I'm gonna level is Warrior because the queues are gonna be god awful.
Yeah.
And I don't want to level from 80 to 90 when the expansion launches. I'm just gonna play Warrior at first, and then a few weeks in, I might try the other jobs.
Yeah.
But
out of those two, which one like interests you the most?
100% Pictomancer.
Okay. Tell me about that. Why is that?
I think Pictomancer's kit just looks way more interesting than Viper. I don't know. I don't really like the Viper aesthetics.
Sure. Okay.
And the other thing, I looked at the abilities that both of the jobs have. I kind of enjoy having a bit more utility.
Yeah. I can see that. I know some people on the FF forums were complaining about how Pictomancer's art has like a very like artsy, cartoony like feel to it. Does that bother you at all? Because I thought that was pretty cool, like the way that it looks.
No, I think it's cool. It definitely sticks out, but I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know if you've been following this at all, but there has been a little bit of drama going on with this whole healers in the game and this like healer strike. I guess, well, first my question is like, how often do you play healer and how familiar are you with healing?
I play healer in, some dungeons every now and then, but I don't really take it into any sort of endgame content. I've healed some extreme trials. I've also raided on healer a little bit, but personally, I think I just don't find it interesting.
Yeah, so that was what I was gonna ask you is what do you think the state of healing is like in 14? Like, there's people who are like on one end who are saying that it's broken. There's people on one end that are saying that it's too easy and it's boring. No one wants to play it. Like, where do you fall into that conversation?
I think the issue with healing is less the healer kits and more the fight design as it works right now.
Okay.
I think there needs to be more incoming random damage. And especially in high-end raids, what you'll see a lot is you'll have a lot of mechanics that just instantly kill you. Basically, a lot of body checks. Like one person is, and the next mechanic wipes everyone. And that kind of erases a lot of those moments where healers can clutch a fight, right? There has to be more damage that is extremely hard that doesn't outright kill you.
Okay. So, so FF14 is my first MMO, and I don't know if this is just like an MMO thing, but I'm just wondering, like, how does the combat or like the raids, like, how does it differ in, say, Guild Wars or WoW compared to 14? Like, what is it that they are doing differently that you think Final Fantasy should do?
I mean, nowadays with both of those games, I'm not entirely sure what they do different. It's been a long time, but
sure.
I think that there's definitely an element of just more random damage coming in World of Warcraft. Like you're looking at those health bars the entire time, whereas in Final Fantasy there's stretches of time during a fight where you just know there's not really anything happening. Right? There's like 30 seconds until the next raid ride, and you just know all you have to do is look at the tank's health bar, basically. Whereas I never really got that feeling in WoW.
I see.
It feels more like I have to pay more attention in something like World of Warcraft than I have in Final Fantasy. And during those times, unfortunately right now in a lot of jobs, you're limited by relatively few damage abilities.
Yeah. Like, are you in favor of having like a complete overhaul when it comes to like the way the fights and the gameplay work? Or are you like? Do you think they could still like tweak it in order for it to be fixed? Like, do you think this is like a broken system, or is just something that needs to be, like work the bugs out? Like, how do you see it?
No, I think this is more just the direction that they went in with this expansion that some people didn't enjoy. I don't think they need to overhaul. I love the fights in this game, right? Don't get me wrong. It's just I don't enjoy playing healer, and I understand healers if they don't like how their jobs play right now. It's understandable.
Yeah. Okay. Dawntrail, we are getting a new field operations. I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on Bozja, on Eureka? Did you enjoy them?
I think Bozja is sleep-inducing, and Eureka, I'm not a big fan of those. I'll say that much. There's a reason why I have never really made a video about Eureka. I'll do anything to never go into Bozja again. I think Bozja is some of my least favorite content in this game. I think the landscape looks...
Okay.
Yeah. I think the landscape in Bozja looks horrendous. I think it's sad that they put that into the game. Eureka at least looks pretty.
Yeah.
I just don't enjoy that type of gameplay, basically.
Interesting. Okay, so my next question was, what are your hopes or expectations for whatever we're gonna get in Dawntrail? Like, is there anything that would make you be like, okay, I wanna try this out, or are you kind of just over it? You don't even want to bother with it.
I'll play it if the rewards are good enough. I hope that they tie it to the relic or whatever, just like they did with Eureka. There has to be a good reason to go in there. The rewards have to be really good, and it has to be something that isn't just doing fates or killing random mobs around the map. It's just not my thing.
Okay, I can see where you're getting at. We're also going to get Beastmaster in Dawntrail, which I feel like Beastmaster was it's going to be a limited job, and I think they've already said that it's going to come out like maybe in the post patches, but I feel like they've been very, very tight-lipped about it. There hasn't really been a lot of conversation about it. So I'm just wondering, like, if you could just speculate for us, what do you think this Beastmaster limited job is going to be like, or what is it that you want to see?
I think if I had to guess what it's going to be like, I think it's going to be very similar to Blue Mage in that you're going around collecting different spells or, beasts maybe, So maybe instead of the Blue Mage collecting blue spells, you're now collecting beasts in kind of the same UI even. I could see that.
Would it be like would it be like a Pokemon thing where you take out the mob and they just fight for you, or how would that work?
Yeah, I think it's going to be something like that. If I had to guess, but outside of that, I really couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
they've really not told us anything. I was actually expecting them to tell us a little bit, but we'll have to see. I think they're still working hard on it, which is why we haven't heard anything. That's
true. I do want to let's talk a little bit about gameplay in 14. So I feel like every time I hear like a raider talk about gameplay, they always at some point bring up like the 2-minute meta. I'm just wondering, like, do you think like the 2-minute meta is like actually like a problem, or is there like a bigger problem with combat that people are kind of overlooking?
I don't think that the 2-minute meta is a problem. What I do think is a problem when it comes to kind of homogeneity of all the jobs is the fact that we don't have any kind of playstyle customization. Basically, if you start playing a warrior, then you're the same as every other warrior that you're going to meet. You don't have the option of customizing your playstyle in any way, whether you do that through talent trees, a bit like in anything. And it doesn't even have to be super extensive. But I would just appreciate the ability to decide a few things based on my playstyle. And I know a lot of people in Final Fantasy 14 are really against that. And, you know, the most common argument is that people are just going to look up whatever the best build is.
Sure, yeah.
But I don't think... I mean, they managed to do it in Guild Wars 2. They managed to do it in WoW. And people don't just always go for the same build.
Yeah.
Right? They have a lot of viable options that you can pick between. It's not necessarily changing the entire playstyle, but just picking a few things that you really like. Now, I don't think it's ever going to happen in Final Fantasy 14 just because they're very concerned with the overall balance of the game. And that's probably the main reason why the jobs are designed the way that they are right now, as well as the 2-minute meta. I think they've just decided to make it a 2-minute meta because it's easier to balance. That's it.
Yeah. Is there a video game out there that you think may not have like the perfect system, but has is there like a video game that you could point at to the devs and you could say like, hey, maybe you should look at what they're doing and try to implement that? Like, what game do you think has like a good system that you think 14 should, study and look into?
No, I think Final Fantasy 14's combat fundamentally is so different from a lot of these games that just taking whatever they're doing and putting it in this game wouldn't work. I think they just need to get creative a little bit and allow people to show their expertise in a given job.
Yeah.
Even with something like the 2-minute meta. And they can definitely do that, right? You can make the jobs a little bit more interesting, right? Make them approachable for new players, but also make them more difficult. That's why I liked some of the Monk changes that we saw recently, where it definitely makes the job a little bit easier fundamentally, but it also raises the skill cap.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really have any other game in mind that does this better.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know what you mean. So, we are at the end of Endwalker, and real quick, this is just like a lightning round type thing, but I'm just wondering if you could just give me like a quick summary, a quick 1-sentence like statement on how you feel about these new game modes that we got in Endwalker. So first, Island Sanctuary. Where's Joseph in Island Sanctuary?
I think it was very disappointing.
Yeah.
Does it have to be 1 sentence, or can I go on a rant?
Go for it.
I think they advertised Island Sanctuary as this kind of casual getaway, no worry in the world thing. And what we got was... Why did they implement this workshop thing? I don't understand it. The fact that I have to go there every week and I need to look at these charts and like go on... I mean, let's be real here. 99% of people, they just look this stuff up online and then input whatever. So it's basically just 5 minutes of you clicking, and then you get annoyed whenever you don't have like one of the materials.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the entire Island Sanctuary experience. Then you go to like your 2 mammoths, pick up your resources, and you're gone. I don't think that's I don't think it's fun. I think it was fun for the first day, collecting the resources, exploring the island. I think the idea of being able to place your own buildings across the island is interesting too, but there's just so little customization outside of which building you place in which spot that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It also doesn't really matter whether you bring any furniture to your island or like you're able to customize it, because I don't think I visited some people's islands, but it's not something that anyone does seriously. I feel like it's just kind of a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I think you are exactly right. I think they had something in mind. I think they laid the foundation okay, but the end result really did just come down to just because like even when I go in there now, I have everything automated. I don't really do anything. I'm just paying for everything to be automated, and there really isn't any reason to go back. And I feel like one of the so I don't know if you play a lot of roguelike games, but there's this game called Coats of the Lamb, which I thought would be like an interesting way that they could make Island Sanctuary a little bit more interesting, which in this game, it's like a roguelike, kind of like I don't know if you heard of like the Binding of Isaac or Hades, where you go through different floors and then you pick up items or power-ups or whatever. And I feel like they could have probably done something like that, like if they had maybe like a combat element where you just like imagine, for example, if rather than just going around gathering, there's like some cave that you go into and you can like fight mobs and they drop the items that you can use to like craft other stuff. Like I just feel like I know that they wanted to make it a casual experience. I think the problem was that it was just too casual, that it just became boring at the end of the day. So, but we are getting, like a sequel to it in Island Sanctuary, in Dawntrail. So maybe this time around it would be a lot better. But I feel like they, like I don't hate them for trying something new. I think it was just a hit and miss, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't mind them experimenting with it. For sure. I think for a lot of people who like, Bosja and Eureka, it's kind of sad that we get something like Island Sanctuary instead of, maybe something more akin to Eureka.
Yeah. Okay, next is Variant Dungeons and Criterion Dungeons.
I think Variant Dungeons are pretty fun. It's something you can go through fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Just experiment around a little bit, get through it. It's not too difficult. I think it's fine. And I think Variant Dungeons are also pretty fun, but they need to up the rewards, which they said they're doing. So I'm completely on board with that. I think both of these are completely fine.
Crystalline Conflict and just PvP in general.
I think Crystalline Conflict is a weird one because I enjoy like the core combat a lot more than I used to. But I think it's a wasted opportunity that we're not able to queue with friends.
Yeah.
It's really weird that one part of the game where you're supposed to play with other players, like one part of the game where cooperation should be the primary thing that you do. Like in World of Warcraft, you have Arena. It's just 3 people queuing up together and, it's all about the teamwork. And whenever you delete that out of PvP, it just feels kind of pointless. When I get queued with random people, it's just, I feel like I'm wasting my time playing ranked. I feel like I'm wasting my time playing casual. The only reason I would play casual Crystalline Conflict right now is if I'm behind on my PvP series rewards. I think Frontline is okay. Mostly because the rewards are good.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of mass combat is more fun to me than Crystalline Conflict. But I think they just have to decide what they want to do with PvP. Like either you invest resources into it or you just leave it be. But what they're doing right now, I think it's just it's disappointing, I think.
And what about Eureka Orthos and Deep Dungeon?
Honestly, until recently I completely forgot Eureka Orthos existed. Again, because there's no rewards. I did it, but there was no reason to go back. I wish that it gave more XP at the very least, because then you could level your jobs in Dawntrail. You could go in there with Pictomancer and Viper and get it to 90, but
yeah,
it's slower than just doing trust dungeons. So what's the point?
Yeah, I think Eureka Orthos and just Deep Dungeon in general, I feel like that has, in my opinion, that has like the most potential for growth. I think even recently, these like sort of roguelike games have become really, really popular. like I said, like Hades, for example. Hades is like one of the biggest games when that came out, and I feel like if they just move more towards that, like just keep having like a more like of a progression system into Deep Dungeon, I think that could be really, really interesting, and I think that is what I am looking for. Oh, and last but not least, what did you think of the relic grind in Endwalker, or I should say like the lack thereof?
Yeah, I do wish that, I wouldn't say I want more of a grind. Like, I don't necessarily want it to take longer, but I want to... I think people need to be made to do other content than they usually do. And the biggest problem with the relic grind right now was that they didn't have to do anything else. Like, you just keep doing your dungeons the same way you always have. You get the tomestones, you spend them on the relic, and you get the relic. It's just a matter of time until you unlock all of them, basically.
Yeah.
I just wish that they made you experience some of the other content. Like, why not tie it in with Eureka Authors? Why not make people do some of the other content, at least temporarily, to complete one of the relic steps? It just...
Yeah.
It's a wasted opportunity again to just have people experience other parts of the game. And I know a lot of people don't want that. They were like happy, well, I only have to buy this with tomestones, but like, do you not want to play the game?
Right. And I think that's it's interesting that you say that, because I was talking to a friend, and he was basically saying, like, it seems when you play Final Fantasy 14, the only thing that you really are doing is you log in, you run a couple of roulettes, a couple dungeons, and then that's kind of it if you don't have like an MSQ to go through. And I think you're right. Like, if they just made the relic grind more of a path to just try out other aspects of the game, I think that could really improve it as well.
Yeah,
I think you're right on that. I do want to switch gears a little bit and talk just about content creation, your career as a YouTuber. You've hit 42K subs on YouTube, and I'm just wondering, like, how does that feel? Like, is that surreal to you? Is it just like another day? Like, when you look at your like sub count at 42K, like what do you see?
I mean, 40K in general is a pretty good amount. Personally, as someone who doesn't really put much stock into subscribers, because I don't think it's that important for how your YouTube videos do in general.
Yeah.
I think it's nice. I think it's a kind of a vote of confidence by a lot of people in the channel, right? Whenever they press subscribe, it's more like, I want more of that, basically. I also don't really go around asking people to subscribe a whole lot. I think I might have done it a few times, but for the most part, I think people do that on their own whenever they feel like they've watched something worthwhile.
Was there a sub goal or like a milestone that was like the most personal to you, the most memorable? Like, was it the 10K? Was it the 1K? Like, which one to you was like the most personally impressive?
I don't think I ever really set myself like a sub goal, again, because I don't think it's that important.
Yeah.
I think what I look at is like video, the subs that I get from videos rather than my overall subs. Basically, I'll take a look at it and see how many subscribers have I gained versus how many people have watched the video. So I think that's way more interesting to look at, because it tells you something about videos that people want more of, more so than any other statistic.
Yeah. What do you consider a successful video, like, to you?
I think a successful video is one where the ratio of me, like the work that I put into it, and the payoff in terms of, how much people like it, how much money I make off of it, how many subscribers I gain. I think that's the most important thing, because you can have a video that you work on for an hour and it gets, 4,000 views, and that's cool. Or you can have a video that you work on for 10 hours and that has to obviously get, way more views for it to be kind of worth your time, basically.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people do kind of lower effort content, and
yeah, they
get fewer views, but that's perfectly fine in relation, right? Because they only spent an hour or two on it. So I think it's not really about just looking at the views, but also the amount of effort you put into it. If you spend 200 hours, like me replaying the freaking story to then make a video about summarizing the Final Fantasy XIV story, is that gonna pay off at the end of the day, realistically, considering how much time I have to spend into it? Probably not, right? It's just the effort to return is just not there. But I'm doing it anyways right now because I want to play the story again anyways, just to kind of recap everything that happened.
So like whenever I do one of these podcasts, I always try to do a lot of research on the guest. Just look into like their channel, look into like the background, their history. And I noticed that you don't necessarily have much of a brand, if you would call it that. And I'm just wondering, like, was that like a conscious decision? Like, because you don't necessarily have like I don't even think you have like a Twitter account where you like promote or anything like that. I'm just wondering, like, was that like a conscious decision? Like, do you just want to be like a relatively underground YouTuber, or like was it like what do you think about like the influencer space, like in general?
I think for me, having these other channels like Twitter, Discord, all of that would just be fuss on the side that I don't think I really need in my life. I think my YouTube I think YouTube does such a good job of promoting videos to the right people that posting it on something like my Discord or some Twitter account isn't really, whatever they call it nowadays. It doesn't really help the video at all, because
that's fair. Compared
to the amount of impressions that I can get on YouTube, it's just laughable. I would rather focus. No,
I was just gonna ask, like, how, because even like I went back, like, you don't really have that many videos, like, in the grand scheme of things, but it seems like every single video that you put out, hit over 30,000 views. So I'm just wondering, like, did you promote your videos at all? Did you like post them to Reddit, or like how did you just manage to go viral with every single video you put out? When I started, I looked at YouTube analytics for a long time. I have probably spent more hours looking at YouTube analytics than I have actually making videos. And I am very selective with the topics that I actually make videos on. Like right now, I have a Google Doc with 3 pages worth of video ideas. That I could make. Like I could start working on videos now and not be done for a few months. Right.
But I just don't make them because I don't feel like the time is right. I'm very I take a long time to think about the video that I want to make, how I can frame it so a lot of people are interested in it. I think that's the most important thing. I think a lot of YouTube have great ideas, what they want to do, like good topics to talk about. They're very knowledgeable, but they don't frame it in the right way. One example, a friend of mine wanted to do YouTube as well, and I explained it to him with like a cooking channel example, right? You could talk about a recipe for spaghetti bolognese, and you could title the video something like Spaghetti Bolognese Recipe. And that would be very interesting for a lot of people who right now want to cook spaghetti bolognese. Or you could call it something that appeals to a lot more people, where you're going on about more why this spaghetti bolognese is better than everything else, even if they don't necessarily want to cook spaghetti bolognese right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that would increase kind of the reach of the video, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
right? You need to really be careful with how you frame things
mm-hmm.
to make it interesting for as many people as possible.
Yeah. Was the whole YouTube meta, was that difficult for you to jump into? Like, for example, having a thumbnail that looks a certain way, having a title that's, you know, slightly clickbaity, but, you know, not too clickbaity. Like, was all of that stuff that that Mr. Beast goes into like a lot, was that all of that relatively hard for you to come into, or like did you kind of just pick it up easily?
I think I picked it up. I definitely didn't pick it up at first,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because I picked titles that weren't very appealing, and also the way that I do thumbnails now. I'm going to be honest. I don't really experiment much with thumbnails anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of found my little niche. Basically, you know, you have a title that's different in terms of text to what's on the thumbnail.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing. Like, if you make a video about a topic, you don't want to mention the same thing in the title and the thumbnail, because that's boring. The thumbnail should be supporting the title.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, depends. And then I think people also overdo kind of their thumbnails a little bit. Like, you don't want anything too clever on your thumbnails.
Mm-hmm.
Because people get confused, right? Whether they click on a video or not is kind of a split-second decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and that's funny because like a lot of people have told me, and I think you mentioned it earlier, that, you know, YouTube subs don't really matter at the end of the day. It's all about, you know, your thumbnail, your title. I think for me, the thumbnail was like one of the hardest things to actually understand, like what makes a good thumbnail, what makes an engaging thumbnail. I'm just wondering, like, what part of YouTube was hard for you to actually, maybe not master, but, you know, to get an understanding of it?
I think the hardest part for sure isn't really like getting people in the video, but keeping their attention for long enough.
The retention.
I think it's very difficult figuring out what people are interested in and what they'll stick around for.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be very, very much respecting people's time on YouTube, more so than some platforms like Twitch. If you're not some super established content creators, like take Asmongold, for example, who can take a topic and talk about it for 2 hours, and people will watch it on YouTube because they know it's going to be interesting, right? They don't care. They're going to watch the whole thing. 2 hours, who cares? If another person talked about the same topic, that video would just flatline. And that's got to do with, you know, and being established already. But for everyone else who's not as established as Asmongold, if you're moving from Twitch, where it's basically all about stalling, right? You're stalling because you have a limited amount of content and you have a stream that's going to be 4.5 hours long, 6 hours long.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of stall things out. You're just hanging out. It's very different. So a lot of people from Twitch kind of struggle with YouTube because it's the polar opposite. On YouTube, you need to get into the topic as soon as possible and just make it palatable. Like, don't over-explain. Don't linger too long on a topic. Kind of respect people's intelligence in a way where they can figure out the details.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because, you know, like I come from the TikTok side of things and like the YouTube Shorts side of things, and that's even more important. Like the first 3 seconds, if you don't have a hook, if you don't have something to keep people engaged, they're just going to, you know, just skip your video. But I'm curious, like I noticed that you haven't really jumped into like the shorts, into like the TikTok. I'm just wondering, like, is that something that you are just like not interested in, or you haven't had the time to do that? Like, what do you think about like shorts and how that plays a role on YouTube?
But I like watching shorts every now and then. Personally, I think they're interesting, but I don't really want to make a habit of it, because I don't want to end up doom scrolling and wasting 2 hours of my life, you know. I think it's very bad for my brain. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
We're getting visited by my friend here, by the way, Zed.
Okay.
Look at his outfit. Sorry, you just saw it. It's the most fabulous Allison on Omega.
Nice.
So I tried doing shorts for, I think I did like 2 shorts videos, and I think I actually deleted it again. It did reasonably well, considering, you know, the amount of time that I spent on it, but I don't think it's worthwhile for what I'm doing personally on YouTube. I know it's worked for a lot of people, but with shorts, the problem is you don't just need thousands of views, but you probably need millions of views to make it worthwhile. And I think Final Fantasy XIV is just too niche of a game to really be that successful in shorts because of that reason. There's just not enough people even playing the game to make shorts worthwhile.
Yeah.
I also don't think that it's great in terms of getting people to watch your long form videos. I don't think that works very well at all. I think those are two different. There's some overlap, but for the most part, these are 2 different audiences. I can't speak for TikTok because I've never tried making videos there.
Yeah, no, it is interesting because, so like I said, like I come from the TikTok side, but what I was realizing is, you know, like I'm already making like a 9:16 video. It's so easy just to change up the aspect ratio, change up the way some of the text is, and to create like a regular 16:9 video. So for a little while now, and I still do it, like from here and there, like I'll post like a full 16:9 version. I'll post like a shorts version of the same video, and then I kind of just like see how they do. And while some shorts do get more views, I noticed that never really translates into like getting subscribers or getting people to actually follow you. I feel like shorts and just like short content in general, it's very disconnected from the actual creator. It's very just like snacks, you know, where you just consume the snacks. You're not really caring about like the creator. So I can see where you're coming from. Because you're right, it doesn't really do much for the channel. At the end of the day, it's just upping like the view count, and when I look at my analytics, you know, higher number is happy feeling. So that's the only reason why I do it. But I think for me right now, I'm just like in this point of my content creator journey where it's like I just want to put my stuff everywhere. It doesn't really matter, like, you know, people like it or not. I'm just gonna post it over here. I'm gonna post it over here, and hopefully one day I'm just cultivating, you know, like a mass following, and then that could translate it to, you know, becoming like a full-time content creator, which is like, I think everybody's end goal at the end of the day. But it's completely different. It's like the stuff that's happening on the TikTok side is just wild. But you know, I like it. I feel like 14 in general is not as saturated on TikTok, which is why I think I've been able to do so well over there on that end. But yeah, it's a whole different world, and you know, everything is changing. It's the biggest app right now, and that's why like I'm just pushing it and just hoping I can get somewhere with it.
Yeah, I have to admit, okay, and it's gonna sound crazy, I have never even installed TikTok.
Well, that's
I've never installed TikTok on my phone for the same reason that I try to avoid watching YouTube Shorts.
Yeah. I think
it's just a massive drain of time. It's very it's very addictive, and I don't want to get into smoking just by never putting a cigarette in my mouth. I'm just never going to install TikTok for the same reason.
I can, yeah, and I, you know, you were completely okay with doing that. Last but not least, I did have more of a personal question, but for me, you know, like I started off just making memes, and then eventually, like I moved on to like more of these like video essays, and I'm just wondering, for me, I had a very hard time doing like voiceovers, you know, having like videos where it's just me talking or explaining something, and I'm just wondering, was that ever difficult for you? You know, editing your own video and like listening to your own voice. Did you ever have to like get over that like anxiety or anything like that, or was it just like easy for you?
I think I still struggle with that sometimes. I fuss a lot about kind of audio quality, because I think it's one of the most important things for you know, your videos. What I fuss about more though is the way that I frame things in my video. The way that I record things is probably very different to a lot of other people. I think many creators will just kind of do very long segments where they talk, and they just kind of leave in the natural pauses and whatnot. Yeah. I tend to record my voiceovers kind of maybe 3 or 4 sentences at a time, and I kind of very carefully think about how I'm going to explain what I'm going to explain. Whether I do that through a script or just thinking about it on the fly, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But I'm very careful in just the way that I frame things, and then also kind of the pace at which I speak to make it interesting for people to listen to.
Yeah, you do have like a radio voice. I don't know if anyone's told you that, but you do have a nice voice.
I think most of that is the microphone.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what do you typically do with like your raw footage? Because, you know, like whenever I'm making videos, like I have tons of like raw footage. Do you just like delete everything once like a video is out? Do you like save all of your video? Like, what do you do with like the raw footage?
I delete all of it. I have a folder where it's just, I make a folder for a video that I have planned, and then I kind of in the week or the few days leading up to it, I just kind of do a bunch of duties that I can use as B-roll maybe.
Yeah.
And then most of the footage for my videos is actually just recorded kind of on the fly. Like I have Premiere open, and I have the game open, and I have OBS open, and then I just record footage as it's needed, basically. Just kind of running around the game's world. And I feel like that makes it a lot easier for me, because I see what I've edited beforehand, and I can kind of match the next frame, the next scene to what we already have.
Okay. Gotcha.
I think that's the best workflow for me personally. And then, you know, any B-roll, combat, and so on, I try and record beforehand.
Yeah. Okay. I just have 2 more questions. 2 the most important questions of this entire interview. The first question that I have for you is, it is 2024. How come Josen doesn't upload videos in 4K? That is 4K? That is a personal question.
I would need a 4K monitor, first of all. Second of all, I would probably need to upgrade my graphics card. So I don't see the value in it. I think so few people have 4K monitors. I don't think it matters. I think you could upload videos in 720p nowadays and still be successful. So
That's true.
I really don't. I really don't care.
Yeah. And then I think the most important question of this entire thing is, what are your thoughts on pineapple on pizza?
I think if you are concerned with other people putting pineapple on their pizza, you need other problems in your life.
Yeah, I agree. Alrighty, Josen. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? What do you got going on in the future? And yeah, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on my YouTube channel, and that's pretty much the only place you can find me. For Dawntrail, I have so many videos planned, including, you know, job guides, everything, news-wise, I also want to lean a bit more into just kind of gameplay videos, not just guides. So that's something that I've planned for Dawntrail. How extensively I'm going to pursue that, I don't know. But at least the first playthrough, I'll have like kind of an edited playthrough for Dawntrail.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I am Alpaca, and this has been Chocobo Radio Podcast. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, chat. Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Bye.